Okay, let's talk about chords. I want to talk specifically about triads. Triads are chords with 3 notes, just like the word tri means 3. And so there are several different kinds of triads. Probably the most common that we start, at least we teach first, is the major triad. A major triad that you might be familiar with would be a C major triad, would be played with C, E, and G. So if we look at the distance between each of these tones, the root, the third, and the fifth, then we can learn what a major triad is made of. So let's count from C to E. 1, 2, 3, 4. What we're counting are half steps here. So as we start on C, we count our first step as we make a step. 1, 2, 3, 4. Between these 2 notes there are 4 half steps. Now between our third and our fifth, if we start here, we step and count 1, 2, 3. 3 half steps. So let's take this formula for a major triad. I tell my students, what's the formula for a major triad? And they say 4, 3. So if we have that knowledge, we can start on any note. Let's start on C sharp. Well, we just did C. Let's start on E flat. And I want to create a major triad beginning on E flat. Let's do our counting. Start here and count 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be 4 half steps. Start here, we need 3. 1, 2, 3. This would be an E flat major triad. So, now can we draw this on the staff? Well, it's very simple. Let's do it in the bass clef. We will draw the 3 notes of our triad, E, G, B, and add our flats on E and on B. That creates an E major triad. So, let's also talk about another form of a triad, and that would be minor. Minor changes just a little bit. Some of you might know that to make a major triad minor, you change 1 note. And you only move it by a half step. So we're going to take the third of our triad, move it down a half step, and now we have a minor triad. Well, what does that do to our formula? This is no longer a 4-3 triad. Let's count our half steps. You might already know what just happened. We took away from one interval and added to another. Starting here, let's count. 1, 2, 3. From here, 1, 2, 3, 4. We've now created a 3-4 triad. So the formula for a minor triad is 3-4. It's opposite of major. All right, so let's create a 3-4 triad starting on A flat. Let's count up 3. 1, 2, 3. Actually, let's do it for G. Minor, so we need a 3-4. 1, 2, 3, and now 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our minor triad. Let's draw it on the staff. First, just begin by spelling your triad. Triads are always spelled in thirds. G, B, D. Go ahead and add your accidental or your black note where you need it. That is a B flat. You have to be careful to spell your triads in thirds, otherwise you might make a mistake and say this is a G, A sharp, D triad. And while that might be played the same way on the keyboard, it's not spelled the same. Triads are always spelled in thirds. G, B, D. We have to skip those letters. G to A wouldn't be a skip. So, we've talked about major triads. We've talked about minor triads. There are 2 other kinds of triads that I want you to know about. There is an augmented triad and a diminished triad. The word augment means to make bigger. The word diminished or dim means to make smaller. So that might give you a clue as to what might happen. So let's try to remember our formula. A major triad is a 4-3. A minor is a 3-4. I wonder what augmented would be. Well, let's go back to C major. And to create an augmented triad, we actually are going to raise the 5th degree by a half step. So we'll take the G, we'll move it up we're still going to spell it C-E-G, but instead of G, we have our G sharp. And that's an augmented triad. Well, what does that do to our formula? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that stayed the same as major. And then how many half steps are between the third and the fifth? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ah, interesting. Our augmented triad is 4, 4. So are you seeing the pattern? And can you guess what a diminished triad might be? It's going to be a 3, 3 triad. So how could we make our C major triad a diminished triad? Well, let's count half steps. We start here. We count 1, 2, 3 half steps. And from E flat, we're going to count 3. 1, 2, 3. So let's see, how would we write this triad? Well, we want to remember that triads are always spelled in skips. So it still has to be C, E, and G, even though you might think that's a D sharp or an F sharp. So in this case, we have to use flats on E flat and on G flat, and that creates a diminished triad. So if you remember your formulas, and you have your keyboard and you can count half steps, then you can write any kind of triad, a major, minor, augmented, or diminished triad.